Hello students, let's continue with our week 3 presentations. So today we're going to talk about preservatives and additives. So we have seen in previous presentations, we already talked about macronutrients, micronutrients. In our last presentation, we talked about salt, which can also be considered an additive. But in that case, we were thinking more about more of it as a mineral and a micronutrient. So talking about preservatives and additives, these are the ingredients or the compounds that sometimes we look at the ingredient list and we say, I don't really get what this compound is doing here, or I don't really understand, it has a very complicated name. So let's talk a little bit about them, and this will help you also in assignment number 2 and the ingredients and the functions of ingredients in from the ingredient list in the products you selected. So the learning objectives are to describe how are direct, secondary, direct, and indirect additives regulated, to distinguish between preservatives and food additives, and to distinguish between natural and artificial. So in some books, you may see that preservatives are part of additives, but for this class, we're going to separate them, and we're going to see what their differences are. So according to the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21, a direct food additive is a substance that is added for a functional purpose in food, and it has an impact on the finished product. And we have division, and we have preservatives. So preservative is added for the specific purpose of extending shelf life. Sometimes we also call preservatives antimicrobials. And an additive is added to the food for different reasons. We have like different characteristics or different reasons for which we want to add an additive. And these are to improve food taste and color. We can also add additives that act as emulsifiers or stabilizers. There's also additives that act as antioxidant. And there's additives that have several functions. So we may have an additive that has an antioxidant property and also an antimicrobial property. So we have compounds that have different functions, not only one function. A secondary direct food additive is an additive that has a technical effect in processing, but we do not expect it to be in the finished product. And here we have a paragraph from Title 21, and it talks about methylene chloride. So methylene chloride is a solvent, and it's a solvent that is used for the extraction of, for example, oils or oleoresins. So oils in like vegetable oils, or oleoresins in some type of spices like paprika and so. And this part of the regulations talks about like how we can say that our oils or are solvent free, and what's the lower limit and it's expressed in parts per million, which is ppms, and we can. An example of part per millions are milligram per liter, and that's just an example. We can have other units. And this is methylene chloride, just an example of a secondary direct food additive. So we can have others, like for example, sometimes we use enzymes to, for example, clarification of orange juices, of apple juice, to break down pectin in apple juice, because normally consumers like a clarified apple juice, and we also use them. But then it is removed because of the action of filtration or other types of processes. So a secondary additive is something that we add during processing, but for the intent of extracting something, clarify something, purify something, or another function. But then we remove it. So we don't expect it in the finished product, or we would expect it at very, very low limits, which the regulations would state. And then we have the third classification, which is an indirect food additive. And this is something that we are not expecting to have in our finished product, but for some reason it because it is in contact with the food, it ends up in the product. So it can be something from the packaging, from holding or processing, that is migrates to the food, but it's not intended. And this is that's why it is called an indirect food additives. Maybe something from the package. And now we have different what we call emerging contaminants. So sometimes we see like free plastics or other types of packaging free from BPA. So these type of compounds, maybe before regulations were in place, they migrated to the product. And this is something that we don't add on purpose to the food, but it ends up in the food. So it's something that sometimes we cannot control, and because something happens, it migrates to the food. And there's ongoing regulations on what type of like chemicals and compounds can migrate from packages to the food, and that's why there's a lot of regulations that are being developed and put in place. So something that is very important is that additives are classified or are what we call recognized as safe, or GRAS, and that's generally recognized as safe. So if we see these letters, GRAS, we can consider that the additives are safe for consumption. And when we have a new additive, or we want to propose a new additive to FDA, there's a lot of regulations that we're going to see during week 5. And there's a lot of data that has to be submitted with this petition for acceptance about in what quantities is this compound going to be used, what are the limits, what is the effect on health, what is like the effect, like if we consume it in high quantities, what will be the effect? And then an expert panel will review these applications and will determine if the compound that we want or the additive that we want is going to be safe for consumption. And this is not something that we just may submit today and it's going to be safe forever, but this is something that is periodically being reviewed by FDA. So sometimes, if you guys remember, we talked about saccharin in the artificial sweeteners. So maybe today it is GRAS, so generally recognized as safe, but maybe in 10 years or 20 years there is evidence that something happens or research, and then FDA can say this is no longer GRAS, and then it is removed. So FDA has a list of additives on their webpage, and they also have the limits. So you can add X or Y additive in this concentration to X or Y product. And this is just FDA, which is the US regulations, but say in Europe they have other regulations or they may have different limits. So let's start with the first ones, which are preservatives. So preservatives are sometimes called antimicrobials, and their main purpose is to extend shelf life and to prevent the growth of microorganisms. So some examples are sodium nitrite, sodium benzoate, and acids. And it is important to notice that these preservatives, some preservatives have an impact in bacteria, some preservatives have an impact in yeast, so different types of microorganisms will be affected by different types of preservatives, and pH is also very important in this type of selection. So let's say sodium nitrite. So sodium nitrite is an approved food additive. It functions in food for to retain red color as an antioxidant and to prevent microbial growth. So as I mentioned earlier, an additive can have many functions. It's used in deli meats and cured meats, and the section of Title 21 that talks about sodium nitrate is here, 172.175, and it has to be included on the label. So there's this controversy about like, okay, so nitrites are used in cured meats, deli meats. So what about organic, natural, and uncured meats? So there was consumers have had and have health concerns about nitrites, and then there were like new business ideas or new claims like uncured, no nitrites added, natural, organic. But nitrates are so important in processing and to make our daily meats safe. So they have to substitute nitrites with something else. So what they did is they used celery juice. So celery has high concentration of nitrates, and then they use a specific culture of bacteria to convert nitrates into nitrites. And then they add celery juice to this type of deli meats. And then they can say they can have claims like uncured, organic. And the question is, are you really consuming less nitrites? So this is a little bit debatable, because at the end, when we ask manufacturers to, like, we don't like nitrites, or we don't like artificial I don't know, colors, or we don't like this type of preservatives, so they are in our food because of a reason, and to develop or to they have a function. So when we want to remove them, we have to be very careful, because we cannot just remove them, because then our product will be unsafe. So if we want something like natural, like we are using celery juice, but at the end it's the same compound. We are consuming nitrites from celery juice that have been converted by a bacteria, rather than the compound itself. So it's very important to read the labels and think about what we as consumers really want, because some of these additives and preservatives is what makes our food safe and safe to consume. So the other one is sodium benzoate, and this is a very widely used preservative. It is grass. It maximum level of 0.1% in food, so it's a very low percentage, and it functions as an antimicrobial and a flavor agent, and it does not occur naturally. So it has to be chemically produced, and it's very widely used in many types of food, like beverages, and normally it's used against bacteria. For example, bread, tortillas. So it's very widely used in many types of food. And if we want like to be more specific and want exactly like what's the maximum level in X or Y type of food, we can look at the FDA webpage. The third example are acids. So there's a lot more preservatives, but we're just going to focus on these ones. Another preservative that is very commonly, and maybe you will see in your products, is sodium propionate, which is very used in bakery products for control of yeast and molds. So going back to acids, so these acids are what we call weak acids. The acids don't really kill microorganisms, but they delay or inhibit their growth. Some examples of acids are citric acid, which is very common, and you will see these in your ingredients list. You can also see things like the salts like citrate, and then we have acetic acid, which is vinegar, and sorbic acid. You can also have other types of acid, like malic acid, tartaric acid, and so the idea of adding this type of acids also is to lower the pH of foods, and this is also acts as a barrier to inhibit microorganisms' growth. So now let's move into other types of additives. So the first ones are the color additives. So we have food colorings and dyes. So why do we want to add color to our food? So we want to add color because sometimes there can be color loss, because of exposure to temperature, moisture, light, and oxygen. And also because colors in nature can vary. Sometimes if we buy, for example, a strawberry today and a strawberry tomorrow, we can have different colors of strawberry, different hues. And so we have, nature varies a lot, and color also in the finished product or manufactured product also may vary. So we have to correct for color differences, because at the end of the day, the consumer wants the color to be always the same. Another idea of why colors has to be added is to enhance, for example, a property that it already has, like make it more vibrant, like in candy, for example, in gummies. So there's a lot of we like the colors, and so, for example, in Coke we have this specific caramel color that is used, and we always want our Coke to be the same color. Also, we add color to foods because of quality, because consumers want it to provide appeal, and also sometimes it's like a distinct quality attribute in our products. So there's two types of colors that we can add to food. They are divided into what we call certified colors and exempt colors. So certified colors are what we call the artificial colors, and they are synthetically made. They are more affordable. They blend well with food. They provide uniform color and variety of hues, and there's a total of 9 certified colors approved for use. If you want to know more about which are the colors, you can take a look at this link, which are color additives questions and answers for consumers. And so these colors are the ones that have the numbers, like yellow number 5, red number 40, and so. So these are the certified colors, and they are certified because each batch of these artificial colors has to be certified and approved by FDA before it goes to the market. And now we have the other category, which are the exempt from certifications, which are what we call the natural colors. They are derived from natural sources, can be like vegetables, fruits, most of the time vegetables. They are more expensive, and they may impact undesirable flavor in food. Because they come from natural sources, they have a flavor associated with them, and that's why this undesirable flavor comes from. Maybe it's not that it's really undesirable, but it's something that maybe you don't want in the product. And some examples are, for example, colors derived from beet, from carrots, from berries. So we have different types of colors in like natural. So we have the red hues, which are called anthocyanins. We have the red purple hues, like from like the beet ones, that are called betalains. We have greens that are called chlorophylls, from like spinach, and we have our yellows and oranges that we call carotenoids, like for example from carrot. So natural colors is also like there's a wide array of colors and color differences, and normally they are from vegetable sources, and more these natural colors are being asked by consumers, so they want natural colors in their food. The only issue is that natural colors are a little bit unpredictable, and they are not very stable. So sometimes they are not stable to light, to high temperatures, presence of oxygen, and the shelf life they have is shorter than certified or artificial colors. So there's always this, we have to find the balance between what consumers want, the cost, and also the quality of the final product. Another type of additives are what we call emulsifiers and stabilizers. So an emulsifier is an additive that is used to stabilize an emulsion, and an emulsion is formed by the combination of oil and water. So oil and water, normally they don't mix. So we need to add an emulsifier for them to mix and to have a stable mixture during time. Some examples are egg lecithin and low soy lecithin. These are some examples of emulsifiers. Other examples are vitamin E. Also, you can find tocopherols in this ingredients list. A stabilizer is an additive that is used to prevent changes. Like if you guys have watched the video for the Chobani yogurt, one of the examples was locust bean gum, which is a carbohydrate, and it was used to prevent the syneresis of yogurt, so the separation of phases. So the water that we see on top of yogurts, that's an undesirable change in the product. So some stabilizers are carbohydrates like guar gum or locust bean gum, which help the product be kept in the shape and the form or the mixture that we expect, and to avoid phase separation. The other type of additives are flavor and flavor enhancers. So some examples are spices and herbs, which are natural antioxidants as well. Some of the drawbacks is that the same thing like colors. Some spices have a specific flavor, and sometimes we don't want that flavor in our food, like cinnamon. Maybe we don't want cinnamon in a savory dish. Maybe in some countries or cultures they like it, but in some others they don't. So when we add these natural flavors, we also have to consider the pairing with the foods that we are using them. We also have sweeteners. We already know about sweeteners, but they also add flavor. Like for example, honey is an example. We have, for example, in the case of flavor enhancers, an example which is monosodium glutamate or MSG, and this is added to a lot of Asian food, and it gives us this umami taste, and these are flavor enhancers. There are some people that have some sensibility to MSG, and I would like you guys to think about what's your impression of MSG, or what do you think when you hear MSG? So as I mentioned before, MSG is monosodium glutamate. It's a flavor enhancer for food and gives us this umami taste. It occurs naturally in cheese, tomatoes, and seaweed, and is considered grass. So artificial versus natural flavors are located in code Title 21. So this is just a definition. Artificial flavor or artificial flavoring is something that is not derived from a spice, a fruit or fruit juice, vegetable juice, edible yeast, herb, bark, bud, root, leaf, or similar plant material, meat, fish, poultry, eggs, dairy products, or fermentation products, and so. And the only difference with natural flavor is that natural flavors are essential oil, oleoresins, extractive protein, hydrolysate, distillate, or any product that is derived from the same thing, a spice, fruit, etc., and so from a natural source. So this is the main difference between an artificial and flavor. So there's additives that can cause reactions in certain individuals, so we can also say that they have a sensitivity. And some of these examples are tartrazine yellow number 5, which is a color additive, carmine also a color additive, annatto also, lecithin, which is an emulsifier, MSG a flavor enhancer, aspartame, which is a artificial sweetener, and we already talked about it, and sulfides and nitrates, which are additives mainly used for antioxidant or as an antimicrobials. For example, sulfides are used in wine, in cider, to stop the fermentation process, and nitrates are used, as I mentioned before, in deli meats as antimicrobials, and they are very important. So that's why if we have any type of ingredients that may cause a reaction to specific people, we should always have the label we should always label them in the product and have people aware that these compounds are being used, and they should be aware of that. So our questions to end up this presentation are: how are additives regulated? What are the differences between preservatives and food additives? And is there a difference between natural and artificial? So with this, we finish our section of preservatives and additives, remembering that this is just a brief summary of the wide range of additives and preservatives that we have in food, and this should help you establish the different functions of the ingredients that you have in your products. If you have questions, please reach out to me by email, and we can schedule an appointment. Thank you, and see you the next presentation.